Okay, I'm about to show you some of the weirdest, most creative,
So it's like, oh no 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 no.
craziest music production tips. But here's the thing, now that you're watching this video, you have to promise me that by the end of this video, you'll at least experiment with one of these techniques. Because like I always say, just think about how much your knowledge would grow if you at least tried one thing from every single video that you watched. Otherwise, it's just a waste of time. There's no point in watching this video and you might as well click off. Do we have a deal? Alright, let's get into it. I love this tip so much because it's really random, but it's also pretty creative and versatile. So it's just this really unique like texture synth layer or whatever you want to call it. And you might be like, well, what's going on here? Like, what is all this? All we're doing is just taking a bunch of one shots and rendering that out as a single file. And in this case, I actually reversed it, but you can also have it not reversed. It'll end up sounding like this. This is something that I actually got from Venus Theory, but I'm kind of putting my own spin on it. So let's create one really quick. Literally all we do is just take a bunch of one shots that are in the same key, and these one shots could be anything. It could be piano, it could be a type of pad or something like that, and we're going to lay them all out in the playlist. Just like this. We could even make them closer together, so something like this. For this particular sound, I'm only using piano one shots, but if you wanted to, they could all be different. It just depends. So I'll spread these out a little bit more, and then let's render it. Let's render this out. And now that we have the rendered version, we can do whatever we want to this. So we could even play chords with it. We could reverse it as well. Sounds pretty cool. And to blend it and kind of fit it all together, you just need to apply some reverb because this will wash it out. So it's perfect if you just want to add a little bit of a more unique atmosphere to your track. One more thing we could do is apply a crystallizer. Crystallizer is just kind of an echo plugin that multiplies the sound and pitches it up and down and stuff like that. Very fun to play around with. I highly suggest you go do this because it's so easy to make and you can literally do it with any type of one shot. Okay, so I'm going to absolutely hate making this one, but recently I've gotten into the habit of just recording my musical ideas whenever I get them, right? And recently I recorded this idea. Now I want you to listen to it and then listen to this track that I'll play you. I'm gonna hate this so much.
So it's like, oh no 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 no.
Yeah, I'm not gonna play the rest of that. Now that you've heard that, listen to this. So what's my point? Well, just getting into the habit of having your phone by you whenever you're out of the house or whatever, and then whenever you have a musical idea, recording it, even if you sound like an idiot like I did. Because think about this. That could be a track that brings you a lot of success, or it could be your personal favorite track that you've ever made. And if you don't quickly record it and transfer it into your DAW, then it's pretty much lost because you'll probably forget about it. This doesn't mean that every single idea that you've ever come up with should be recorded and produced, but it's great to get into the habit of it because this is what all of the successful music artists do. If you're out and about and you have an idea, record it really quickly and see what you can do with it, because the better you are at connecting your mind to the DAW, the easier everything is going to be for you. Once you have the main idea down, allow your inspiration to take over and guide the rest of the track. So for example, with this one, I actually changed the key from the original voice note and stuff like that. Imagine being able to hear something in your head, and then within 15 to 30 minutes, you have a real life version fully produced of the idea that you heard in your head. Just think about how useful that is. That's why it's so important to get into the habit of this right now, because the more that you do it, the more you'll get better at connecting your mind to the DAW. All right, notice anything different? I know, I'm in Ableton. Don't get mad at me. But I found that this tip works a lot better in Ableton than FL Studio. And you can still do this in FL Studio, but whenever you do, there's this really weird high-pitched noise that just, it's really annoying. I don't know how to explain it. You'd have to see for yourself. But anyway, what if you were able to turn any sound into a crazy glitch sample? Like this snare, for example. Or this percussion. And you might be like, how are you doing that? Well, literally all I'm doing is just spamming 100 OTTs on this single sample and then pressing play. So we could take a clap and we could have multiple of them. And of course, if you wanted to, you could go ahead and resample these. But now you might be like, well, what would I use these for? I mean, they sound weird. They're all like noisy and stuff. The heck? Well, let me show you really quick. So this is one of my old tracks and I'm gonna play it for you really quick. So here's what it sounds like. So pretty traditional melodic dubstep track. But here's the thing, in this track, if you look closely, you can see that I actually use these glitches in random parts. So like this one here, as well as this one, and even this one here. So when you spam the OTT and make these sounds and then put them all into a folder, you can then use these later to kind of just sprinkle onto your track as extra details, and they can even add a little bit of texture. So we have this Reese fill here. This is without the glitch sound, and this is with the glitch sound. So it just adds a little bit of something to the track, makes it more unique, and fills up some space. Here's an interesting one. This is an experimental project I made for the Serum Tips video. So now I'm going to test you. Now that you've heard that, I'm going to take a detail out of the track and let me know if you can kind of tell what's wrong with it. It feels like it lost a lot of texture and character, and here's why. I actually took away these two serum layers right here. So there's this one, and there's this one. And so what am I doing with these serums here to add texture to those synths? Well, you can actually use serum as a sampler with the noise oscillator here. I just dragged in some random pad sample, and really you can use any sampler that you want. So you can even be the default sampler. And really quickly, I'm just gonna take off the effects and show you the piano roll. So I'm literally just playing chords with this. So without the effects, it sounds really out of tune, really noisy, but we'll add the effects on, and the key here is Chroma. This track is an F sharp minor, so I'm selecting F sharp minor here, and this essentially just tunes the sound to that key. So without Chroma, it's really messy. That's why we need it. And you can also do this with retune or pitch map. Now it might sound really weird by itself, but when you add it to the synths and you make sure they all fit together, and you can use automation to kind of blend those all together and create something really, really interesting. It's like a symphony. Crazy. Okay, as you know, almost every single DAW has a snap to grid option. If you take a sample and you place it, as you can see, it's snapping to these lines here. You can change this to a quarter beat or a half beat or whatever you want. But in this tip, we're just going to use none, and we'll try and make a drum pattern without even worrying about these samples being on beat. When you just kind of let go of the snap to grid option and just not worry about all of these samples being on beat, it can add such a unique groove to your track. So mainly with these hi-hats here, I'm just kind of placing them randomly throughout the playlist and seeing what it creates with no snapping to grid whatsoever. It feels a little bit more freeing and you're not locked into something specific. I actually use this tip in this project here. Now this is very, very experimental. So here's what it sounds like. And as you can probably tell, for most of this project, I didn't have the snap to grid option. It was just selected on none the entire time. And I ended up chopping a ton of drum samples up and creating some really unique patterns like this one. Even these chords here, I made these without snapping to the grid. This just instantly allows you to be a little bit more free. This tip is about using mechanical sounds and layering them with your instrument, whatever it might be, to create a unique texture. So for example, I'm using this one here. I've applied a low pass filter to it as well as some reverb, and I have this piano melody that's playing the exact same pattern as the mechanical sound. And so here's the melody without that sound. And if we add it in, it just adds something more unique to the piano. It doesn't sound as generic. And then we could play with the positioning of this sample. So here's an interesting loop that I made using the exact same type of mechanical sounds. Some of these are ones that I made using granular synthesis or that I recorded. For example, this iced coffee one here, which funny enough was recorded in the back of my girlfriend's car. And then I have the string melody with a lot of strumming notes and stuff like that. And with all of those combined, you get this really cool mechanical sound that you can't really find anywhere else. Now this one is one of my favorites. As you can see, I have 3x oscillator opened up right here, selected on white noise. Sounds like TV static. And you can use any plugin that generates white noise. White noise is every single frequency playing at the same time. But what if we use an EQ to kind of solo through every frequency and basically play individual notes like a melody? Well, here's how we do that. I have this long note here, and let's go to the mixer. Now I'm going to be using FabFilter Pro Q3. What we can do is create a point here, and then I'm going to turn the Q all the way up, and we'll right click this and select the shape as a bandpass. And then we can make the slope 72 decibels. And now if we play it, it's basically just a sine wave, but we're basically just gliding through every single frequency, and we want to kind of snap to a scale, right? And to do that, we can just use autotune. So for example, we can do E minor, and now it's gliding through every single note in E minor, right? So now I have another project open, same exact white noise as before, and same exact EQ as before, except this time I'm actually applying some distortion to it to add more harmonics, and after that, then I'm applying the auto tune, and then I wash it all out with some reverb and some delay. I also have a bass, by the way, so if we play around with this, super fun to play around with. If we decrease this Q here, we can give it a slightly more noisy texture. Alright bro, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. I try not to give you the tips that all these YouTube content farms give you. I wanted to be a little bit more creative with it this time. And remember, we made a deal. So now that you're at the end of this video, you have to go and experiment with at least one of these tips that you learned. Because if you do this for every single video you watch, your knowledge will compound and you'll learn so much more than you were originally. Otherwise, this video was just a waste of time. So it's time to start now, bro. Anyway, please subscribe if you want to, and check the links in the description. Completely up to you. Make music now, and you'll thank yourself later. Peace.